Hey everyone, Adam here again. I'm going to be doing another vintage PC build. This is going to be more the computer that I would have had in like mid 1998 if I had had the money when I was a kid, rather than the one that I actually did have, which was the Pentium 233 MMX. This is all kind of inspired by this case. This is a very cool ATX case. I think Alienware used to use these when Alienware was actually something I wanted, back before Dell and all that stuff. It's just a big black case, which in and of itself was kind of unusual for the time. I'm not sure if this is from 1988, but it's from around that time, at least gives the feeling of it. But it has this cool hydraulic door. Look at that. That's pretty sweet. So it hides the drive bays. So it's got 3 5 1/4, 2 3 1/2 external. What else have we got on this? It's got a side fan. It looks like this case actually still has the fan here. On the back, it's just a completely typical ATX style case. So your power supply, it comes with an I/O shield already installed. A tiny little fan. That thing's probably going to be really noisy. That might be something to look into replacing. We'll see how it goes. And then it's got a full-size 7 expansion slots. So, it's a little dirty. It's been sitting out in my garage for a while as I've been gathering parts for this. So, we'll get back to that and take a little bit more look at it when we actually get to putting the system together. So, the motherboard that I've chosen to use is an Asus P2B. This is a slot 1 motherboard. It can support a Pentium 3. I'm going for a Pentium 2 build though. That whole Pentium to Pentium 2 to Pentium 3 thing happened really fast from the MMX Pentium 1 to the Pentium 3s and the slot 1. That was all in a matter of like a year and a half that these processors came out. Basically, by the time the Pentium 450 came out, the Pentium 3 450 was already out, which was very similar. I think it just had one extra instruction set was the main difference. But things really progressed quickly from like the 1998 to 2000 period in terms of processor clock, all that stuff. So I'm going for a Pentium 2. There's going to be a top-of-the-line Pentium 2. I have a Pentium 2 450. I actually have a 400 here as well. This one was supposed to be a 450, but the guy sent me a 400, so I bought another one. This is the actual 450. I'm going to go ahead and swap the heatsink out and everything, because this one did not come with one. So it probably worked out just as well anyway. As far as memory, I'm just using the same amount of memory, the exact same memory sticks. I bought like a dozen of these. This is Crucial PC 133. These are all 128 megabytes each. So we'll have 384 megs of RAM, which should be enough. I'm probably going to install Windows Millennium Edition on this, just because I kind of like to have a computer that represents each major incarnation of Windows. I got a couple of optical drives and a floppy drive here for that case. We have, for the 2D graphics, we have a Matrox. This is a G200 Millennium 8 megabyte version. Now this is an AGP card, and it's probably relatively good on its own with 3D. It's kind of like my Banshee that I have in the other machine. It can actually do 3D graphics as well, but it's going to be responsible solely for the 2D graphics on this, because I have 2 of these Voodoo 2 cards. They're not exactly the same. One is Creative and one is Diamond, but I think they should work in SLI regardless, because they have the same chipset and everything, so they should both work the same. I never had a Pentium 2 machine or Voodoo cards, anything in SLI, until I got into more modern stuff. This is an SLI cable from back in the day. It's the same actually connector as a floppy cable. The only difference is I think there's a couple of pins that get flipped here. You can actually make your own, from what I understand, if you want to go through the trouble. I happen to just be lucky enough to get both the video pass-through cable and this with one of those cards. We're going to use a Sound Blaster Live again. This is, if it's not the same, it's at least very similar to the one that's in my Pentium 233 build. And then we also have just an Intel 10100 NIC for internet access, because although I don't really use these on the internet because they're ancient and you shouldn't use computers that old on the internet, I do like to have them on the network so they can do file transfers and all that sort of stuff. So I am going to get the table cleared off here a little bit, get this stuff out of the way. Oh yeah, the power supply too. This is an old Antec 350 watt power supply. It should be good. I have a bunch of Antec Basiqs. I'm pretty much using those for all my retro builds from now on. But I wanted to see if this one would work, so we're going to use it up, because it doesn't have any SATA connectors or anything, so it's not really useful for anything beyond like maybe an early Pentium 4. I think that's actually what it's from. But anyway, I'm going to get this table cleared off. I'll install the power supply on my own here. As far as this retaining bracket, this motherboard didn't come with one, but I found a seller on eBay who was selling brand new slot 1 retaining brackets, which was cool. You don't really need it. I think the processor would probably stay in there well enough, but better to be safe than sorry and actually use the proper retaining bracket. So I'm going to get the heatsink swapped over. I'm going to get the power supply installed and get that going. So I'll be back in a second. I forgot to mention the hard drive that I'm using is going to temporarily be this Tri-Gem Spin Point. It is a 15.3 gigabyte hard drive. I will be replacing this with a Western Digital when it comes in. I just don't have one available. This came from some junk computer that I got at a Goodwill. I like to buy thrift store computers because I get a lot of extra CD-ROM drives, memory, hard drives, that sort of stuff that, you know, you spend $5, you get a new hard drive out of that one machine maybe, and you know, that's cheaper than what you'd find on eBay. So anyway, gonna go ahead and get this thing installed too. We got our 2 CD-ROM drives and our floppy drive. I have on order a zip drive for this too, because I do like to use zip drives for these things. So another nice thing about this case is, like many of these old cases, it has a removable motherboard tray, which makes life a lot easier. So I'll get this configured in a little bit. Anyway, I'm just kind of dusting it out and cleaning it up because it has been sitting, like I said, in my garage for a while. Collected a lot of dust, but I think that little window there more or less lines up. Do these even have? Yeah, there's an LED there and an LED there. So it'll kind of glow through this little window, I guess, when the optical drives are in use too, which is kind of nice. So I'm gonna get this hard drive mounted up. Alright, so I got the motherboard mounted up, processors in place, memories in place. I was going through my extra parts thing, and for some reason I had this Noctua 60mm fan lying around. I'm going to preemptively replace this case fan, just because I'm sure it's going to be too loud. I would probably like to get a new cooler for this, because this has a 2-pin connector. The motherboard has a 3-pin, and it's not, like, if you look at the two of these, they're notched differently. So, not really sure how I'm going to work that out. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and swap out this fan just to be on the safe side, I think. Alright, so we got the Noctua fan up and running. I'm going to probably just solder this temporarily to one of the extra connectors from that Noctua fan so I can use it on the motherboard. I'll probably, or maybe even just like this. I'll sort that out later. As far as what we're doing next, I think it's time to put the cards in. So we'll start with the Matrox in the AGP slot, and followed by our Voodoo cards. And I think I'll probably put the Ethernet. I don't think anything's ever been installed in that slot. That one was tough. And then Sound Blaster down there. Alright, so I need to find a blank for this, because this actually, it's weird. Older cases usually didn't have these punch outs. It has a punch out instead of a replaceable blank. So I'm going to go in my parts drawer and find that. But basically, as far as this goes, this is the SLI cable. We do that, and then on the back, I'll show you when we're actually setting it up, but we run this cable from the output of the Matrox down into the input here on the 2D card, and then on the Voodoo card, and then the output comes out of that card. So we'll get that set up when we actually get to doing the system setup, because that's just going to be a big cable hanging out of the back. So I'm going to go look for a couple of blanks and get this all screwed together. Alright, so replacing the CPU cooler. This is the one that came off of the 400 megahertz Pentium II. The thermal grease had completely turned to solid junk. So I went ahead and replaced that with some new thermal grease as well. I am going to order a new fan. I think I'm going to go on, maybe not new, but a used fan at least for this heatsink. I'm going to go on eBay and look for that. A lot of these were passively cooled, not necessarily up to 450 megahertz, but I tried running it without the fan for now, rather than splicing something together here. We got all of our cards secured. I'm going to go ahead and install this now in the case, but before I do that, I just want to make sure. I don't know if this is a jumperless board. There are definitely some jumpers here for the front side bus, which looks like it's already set to 100 megahertz. And I'm not sure what these are for. They're a CPU multiplier or anything. So I want to check that. This is a used board. I should probably swap out the CMOS battery as well. It's unlikely that it's still good, but so I'll go find another little power button for that. And I'm going to get the manual online and see what's going on with this set of jumpers here before we put this back in the case, because it's going to be a lot harder to work with then. Alright, so I actually got a couple of packages in the mail today with new parts for the Pentium II machine. The first was this hard drive. This is the exact same model that I have in my Pentium I machine. I decided to replace the drive I was using because when I tested the machine, just turning it on, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. So it's a Seagate Barracuda ATA4. It's 20 gigabyte hard drive, and this is probably what I'll use on most of my retro machines. It's a decent hard drive. I used to use these back in the day. And then the other thing I got is a better cooler for the CPU. So I can actually open this. It's a brand new Cooler Master. The cooler itself is kind of smaller and stuff, but it has a fan, and still has the same weird cutout. I don't really know why the cache doesn't get covered on those chips, but it doesn't. So I'm going to install this off camera just because it's kind of annoying and hard to do. Alright, because of the difficulties with the way the mounting works, I think that's for a Pentium III or maybe a Socket A processor, that new heatsink. I just ended up putting the old heatsink back on with new thermal paste, and I put on the new Cooler Master fan, because the fan was the primary issue anyway. This actually looks like a nicer heatsink. It does have some thermal paste all over it now. I'll have to clean that up. So we're going to go ahead and try to boot this thing up now and see what it actually does. It should be good to go. So we can get into setup here. Alright, Pentium, I got the settings correct. That's good news. I have not put in the new hard drive. You can probably hear that. It's terrible. Yeah, the date is relatively close, so I guess the CMOS battery is okay. So I'm not really going to bother changing any of these setup things right now. I'll go through that. Just want to see. This is a used hard drive that I've had lying around. I want to see if there's anything actually on it. I don't have the Voodoo cards actually hooked up. This is just coming straight out of the Matrox card right now. See if it has anything on it. I think it does have an installation of something on it. So it's recognizing all of our memory. Detected the drives. I'll have to fix the detection, but is it going to go? It's doing something. Boot from CD-ROM. Windows. Is this XP or 2000? Listen to the hard drive chug away. Actually, maybe the hard drive is not that loud on this. Yeah, so I have Windows 2000 on it. It's not going to boot, but obviously. I'm going to see how bad this hard drive is. I'm going to do a memory test and probably run HDAT on the hard drive. Maybe we'll just use this hard drive and save the other one for something else. So I'm going to get a disk and see if we can get into mem test and let that run for a while. Give it a time to heat up and stuff. Alright, so we got mem test 86 running. I'm going to let it run for about an hour or so just to, it's good to test the memory, do a full cycle on that, and then also just make sure that the machine can hold up to running for that long before we get into installing Windows. Make sure there's no big hardware faults or anything like that. So I'll be back in a bit when this is done. Alright, so we have basically finished up this test. It looks like it's going to have passed. So I am going to go ahead and shut it down and replace that really noisy hard drive because it's driving me crazy. It's got this really high-pitched whine. I don't know how well it's going to come across on camera, but I'm going to go ahead and replace that, and then we'll get started on some other diagnostics before we install Windows. Alright, so new hard drive is go. I am going to try doing the Hiram's boot CD, see how that goes. I kind of doubt Mini XP will run on this thing, but it's worth a try. I got my Pentium sticker down there, we got our LEDs going, and I think it's still set to auto detect hard drive, so it should probably just detect that hard drive, but we'll see. Boot from Mini XP. Can it do it? Oh, maybe. Windows XP system requirements aren't ridiculous. You could probably run Windows XP practically on this machine, but let's see what we got going here. Come on. It's actually pretty zippy there. Look at that go. Can you do it? Sorry, this is shaky. I'm trying to reorient myself. The floor up here is really squeaky too. I've never tried to boot Mini XP on something this old. Definitely taking its time. Oh, it's making noises. Oh my god. It did it. Wonder if it's even remotely functional though. Let's set this over here real quick. Actually, that's probably gonna pick up all the vibrations. Is it functional? Did I not plug in a mouse? I may not have plugged in my mouse. Anyway, I formatted the hard drive. I'm going to run an overnight, well not an overnight, but a diagnostic on it. I'm going to go do some other stuff while it's doing that. I think we're going to end this build here. When we come back next time, we'll go ahead and configure Windows Millennium Edition. I think I'm going to put on this. And we'll wrap this build up. Thanks for watching.